Good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here in spite of the queues, terrible today, and also thanks to those courageous people online that are probably up very, very early to listen to us. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, so welcome everyone to this Energy Community Side event at COP28 here in Dubai, where we all come together with a shared commitment to make our future better, more sustainable, and more resilient. And today I'm very honored to host the representatives from the European Commission, the Energy Community Secretariat, the contracting parties of the Energy Community, as well as GIZ, CAN, and the European Investment Bank. And together we will all shed more light on a very important topic, which is the transformative impact that the EU climate and energy legislation, which is what we call the European acquis, has had on our collective journey towards enhanced energy and climate target. And today we will focus on showcasing how the implementation of the EU legislation has led to enhanced targets and increased climate ambition of the contracting parties, as well as a deeper understanding and commitment to mitigating climate change. An exchange of views will also take place on the challenges and benefits on such a process, focusing on interlinkages with other EU legislation. As we convene today, it is imperative that we recognize the vital role we all play in advancing our global efforts towards a low-carbon and sustainable energy future. The challenges we face are immense, but so too are the opportunities for collaboration, innovation, and shared progress. And the event today will also serve as a platform to showcase the remarkable achievements resulting by the commitment of the energy community contracting parties to the principle of the EU climate and energy acquis. And we are all witnesses on how these foundations have set enhanced targets for the region and propelled us all towards greater climate action. As we gather here, we find ourselves as a critical juncture where the implementation of the EU legislation has become the backbone of our efforts to combat climate change. The energy community contracting parties embraced this journey already with the adoption of the decarbonization roadmap back in 2021. The decarbonization roadmap is a political document outlining the sequence of adoption, transposition, and implementation of decarbonized focused legislation in order to put the energy community contracting parties on a path towards climate neutrality. The energy community contracting parties have already made remarkable progress with the implementation of the decarbonization roadmap with the adoption and transposition of important energy and climate legislation. Last year, at the Energy Community Ministerial Council, you followed this up with the adoption of ambitious energy and climate targets. Along with the targets, you also adopted the MRV package, on which I congratulate you very much. The next step of the decarbonization roadmap is to agree on a way forward regarding carbon pricing. Robust emissions data is the backbone of any form of carbon pricing, be it a carbon tax or an ETS. In this context, it is essential to prioritize the implementation of the already adopted MRV legislation within the framework of the energy community. And today's panel is a unique opportunity to delve into the experiences of our esteemed panelists and understand how the implementation of the EU legislation has not only structured their work on climate action, but has also fostered a deeper understanding and commitment to mitigate climate change. So first of all, thank you very much to the panel, to the panelists for their presence, for the insights they are going to bring. Welcome to all of you. And allow me directly to give the floor to our first keynote speaker, who is Ditte Juel Jorgensen, Director General of DG Energy. And before listening to Ditte, please remember those in the room to wear headphones because you're going to hear her much better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana, for the kind welcome. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor to start my day together with the energy community, always in good company. And good morning also to everyone online. Thank you for joining from where you are. Our common effort to decarbonization, our common effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is one of the other objectives that unite us, the European Union, countries in the energy community, countries in the European neighbourhood. And it unites us around the objective of mitigating climate change. It unites us around the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, but it is also an objective, a cooperation that can help us, that can help foster our economic growth, bring jobs, bring long-term sustainability, and investor certainty in the way we organize ourselves. And that is one of the key aspects of how the regulatory framework that we are building together across the European Union and the energy community can help bring growth in the entire region, in addition to the climate objectives. We have seen we have heard from our President von der Leyen over the last years that enlargement is a critical policy, a vital policy for the European Union, and there are great benefits both for the countries that are exceeding the European Union, but also for the European Union itself and the current 27 member states. This objective of enlargement, of accession of other countries has really gained momentum over this last year, as was reflected in our recommendations that came out recently in the 2023 enlargement package that was spearheaded by my colleague Gert-Jan Koopman, Director General, who is sitting here now and has joined it, both for the Western Balkans, Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia. Now, the energy sector is quite special in the way we are already working together with the accession countries, because we have built a very strong partnership and cooperation under the energy community framework, which has as part of its premise that the future really is in the European Union, also for the contracting parties. And we are very well advanced in integrating our energy policy and our energy markets well before the accession to the European Union of the contracting parties of the energy community. Because the European Energy Rule Book is extended to the energy community, we make proposals from the European Commission to bring the energy community countries into the European energy regulatory framework. And the aim is to export the main pieces of the legislation as building blocks of the internal market, and thereby extend that internal market and the decarbonization and energy security agenda to the energy community. So we have proposed the adoption of the Clean Energy Package, all the key elements of our legislation on the electricity market, on the 2030 energy and climate framework. And so I would like to say a few words about what does that mean in practical terms for the energy community and energy community countries. Now, first of all, our 2030 climate and energy targets were adopted already last year by the Energy Community Council in December. And with that, we are setting a very clear pathway to decarbonization, climate neutrality, through the energy transition that is also so central in the ongoing work here at COP28. Now, we can see that to achieve the investments that are necessary for the energy transition, to make that change happen, what is absolutely critical is a stable regulatory framework that gives predictability and certainty to investors into green technologies and into infrastructure and renewable energy. So that is one of the key points both in the European Union and again in our cooperation with the energy community, so that there's clarity of well-functioning energy markets, a well-functioning electricity market, and the necessary investments into clean energy and energy efficiency. Now, one of the blueprints for that are the national energy and climate plans that all the 27 European Union member states draw up, outlining how do they intend to achieve the 2030 targets. What is their pathway through climate legislation and energy legislation in particular? And these national energy and climate plans, again, extend also to the countries in the energy community partnership and really provide that policy framework and, again, predictability and clarity about the pathway. So these national energy and climate plans guide policy decisions and help ensure consistency across energy and climate objectives, and again provide a predictable framework for investor confidence also in the energy community partners. So we look forward to seeing the national energy and climate plans also from the energy community countries. Now, the next point I would like to point to is the electricity integration package legislation, which enables a full integration of the electricity markets of energy community countries into the European Union internal market. This is a critical point because we already have a synchronization of our electricity systems. We already have integration in terms of the energy flowing across borders. And so if we have a market integration as well, this will facilitate that integration, and it will facilitate the integration of renewable energy and help to achieve the energy and climate targets that we have set ourselves towards climate neutrality in 2050. So the adoption and implementation of these common European policies really will help pave the way for green transition, investment and investor certainty. So the energy community has a legislation that is as dynamic as the European Union framework, continuing to align with and adopt European legislation so as to create that clarity. We have our next ministerial with the energy community countries already on the 14th of December, so just after COP. And there we will be proposing the Trans-European Networks regulation for adoption or for alignment also with the energy community. And that is an absolute critical point, a cornerstone in our energy regulation, because that is outlining what is the infrastructure planning, what are the infrastructure objectives that are necessary to achieve decarbonization. The revised Trans-European Network regulation makes sure that all of our infrastructure aligns with the decarbonization objectives so that we focus our investment and planning on that. It's clear that some of this is also challenging for neighbouring countries, for energy community countries, because the starting points are different, and that's why we are also at the same time providing financial support and technical assistance, including via the Energy Community and the Energy Community Secretariat under Artur Lokowski. So thank you very much for all the work you're carrying out there. But the enabling regulatory framework really is a precondition for that to happen and for the investments to take place. And of course, what we're doing together, the European Union and the energy community, completely aligns with what we're doing here at COP28, where just yesterday our President, Ursula von der Leyen, launched the global pledge for a tripling of renewables and a doubling of energy efficiency by 2030. And as you will probably have seen, 118 countries globally signed up to that. And so we now have a strong global movement towards tripling of renewables and doubling of energy efficiency, which would bring us an additional 11 terawatt by 2030, and which would allow us to start phasing out fossil fuels because it can be replaced by renewable energy and because of the energy efficiency. Together with the upgrade and with the developments in the global methane pledge that was launched 2 years ago, and where now 150 countries have joined, we really have made a big push already in these early days of COP28 for the energy transition and the energy transformation that is so critical for our work towards climate neutrality and to respect the 1.5 degree threshold that we have set ourselves in the Paris Agreement. So our cooperation between the European Union and with energy community countries, with the accession countries, really is absolutely critical, also in a global context, to achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement, to align our policies together with that, and to bring together the necessary investments through a strong and common market and a common regulatory framework that facilitates investments and helps us to build the necessary infrastructure and renewable energy technologies. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, Dite, for highlighting the ambition of the project of the energy community, some of the challenges ahead, and also for making the link between what is happening in Europe and what is happening here at COP and the great push in ambition that we are seeing in the field of the energy transition at this COP. And now to continue with a broader picture of our relationship with the energy community country, I'm very glad and honored to give the floor to Gert-Jan Koopman, who is the Director General of DG NEAR. So, Gert-Jan, the floor is yours. Welcome.
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Diana. Thank you, Dite. I must say that it's a real pleasure that we're doing this together amongst three Commission services because it shows how integrated these policies are and how important it is that our neighbourhood policies, where considerable resources are available, also in conjunction with those countries that are on an accession track, fully take account of our climate and energy objectives. And in fact, not just in terms of integrating them in the requirements that flow from accession, but also looking at them as an opportunity for competitiveness and for strengthened economic growth. So I think that the work of the energy community in this regard is absolutely critical, and Dita has just spoken about it in quite considerable length, so I won't delve into it, other than to say that the work that is being done there, of course, greatly facilitates and accelerates the work that the countries will need to do to prepare for enlargement. So by in reality already integrating in large parts of the internal market what the energy community and its sister, the transport community, do, which has a similar mandate, is effectively introduce elements of progressive integration in the internal market and progressive accession to the European Union, which provides a lot of benefits to these countries already ahead of the actual enlargement. I would also say that in addition to providing benefits for the countries, it's very illustrative to look at the benefits that the EU derives from this. And if I can just point to the example of Ukraine, hard to believe for some, actually Ukraine will be providing significant energy storage for natural gas, even as it battles the unjustified aggression that Russia has unleashed on it. It's already providing a significant contribution to the EU internal energy market. And that shows that the expansion of the internal market, the progressive integration of partner countries in it, is a win-win for all the countries concerned. I would also go one step further. We have been talking about accession countries because that's important in the context of the work of the energy community. But of course, the neighbourhood is broader and also consists of the southern neighbourhood, where in North Africa and the Middle East, many of the EU's partners are critically positioned to make the transition to clean energy. And again, here I believe that there is a very clear win-win for the EU and for these countries by working together, building common infrastructure, and I would add, also looking very closely at regulatory issues. So I don't want to spring this on Arta, who is sitting here, but I do believe that we need to think much harder about intensified cooperation also in a regulatory space with these countries, because simply building infrastructure is not good enough, as Dita just said. Without progressive alignment of the regulatory framework, trade will be difficult. And that is actually really important because the infrastructure investments will be costly. They will need to be paid for. Users will have to contribute. And without these contributions being funded over a longer period of time, it's going to be hard to make the decisions at an early stage and to accelerate the investments. So clarity about the regulatory framework and stability of the regulatory framework will be essential also for ensuring the climate transition. So I would like to put it in this broader context as a very positive agenda for the climate, for energy systems, but also for competitiveness and energy security. This is really something where all of the partners and the EU institutions have a huge opportunity to reap very positive gains in the next few years. Now, I would like to delve a little bit deeper into the different accession-related building blocks. And then I'll close by saying a word on the southern neighbourhood. Because obviously, what I want to say is that in addition to the regulatory alignment, it is important that we support the countries through financial instruments and support in a way that aligns with the policy objectives and the regulatory agenda. And that is indeed what we have been doing traditionally in neighbourhood policy, where considerable funds are available. My DG is responsible for about €3.5 billion of support a year for the neighbourhood, large parts of which are now moved towards guarantee instruments and financial instruments more generally, working with our implementing partners. I'm delighted to see Marcus Bent from the EIB here, who is one of the key implementing partners. So is the EBRD and others. So significant financial firepower that, of course, can help accelerate the necessary transitions and alignments. Let me add that we believe that convergence in economies and energy systems is not progressing fast enough, and this is why both for the Western Balkans and for Ukraine, we have put forward very ambitious policy proposals. For the Western Balkans, the Commission presented, in conjunction with the enlargement package on the 8th of November, a new growth plan which would be modeled on the economic instruments we use in the European Union. In the European Union, we use an instrument called the Recovery and Resilience Facility, where clear policy priorities are identified, very strong emphasis on the twin transitions, notably the green transition, and reforms that are needed to achieve this. Payments for the necessary investments to facilitate the policy objectives, reaching the policy objectives, are only made when the reform conditions are met. So it's ex ante reform conditionality. The new growth plan for the Western Balkans is modeled on exactly the same logic, is aligned with the accession track. So many of the fundamental reforms needed to get the countries into the EU will be conditions under the plan. But there are also socio-economic conditions to speed up growth. We would like the region to grow much faster, to double the size of its economy in the next decade, and to integrate progressively. And what is very telling is that when we do the analysis with the countries concerned, we see that energy and climate-related reforms are actually critical in all of them. So the energy transition, decarbonizing their systems, including putting an emphasis on energy security, is actually essential for them to reach their growth objectives, which means also more investments in energy systems, energy market reforms piloted by the energy community, backed up by ambitious investment plans, which this growth plan would facilitate. And we are working in this context to very much base the energy chapters on the so-called national energy and climate plans, which are being developed in the context of the growth plan. So you see clearly how our policies are integrative and are working in tandem to reach the objectives. For Ukraine, of course, we are in a totally different situation of active warfare where support needs to be much larger, whilst for the Western Balkans, we're topping up the existing support through our proposal with an envelope of 6 billion euros over 4 years. For Ukraine, we're looking over the same period at 50 billion euros of loans, grants, and investment support under the Ukraine facility. This is first and foremost needed to sustain the economy of the country, to make sure public finances are balanced. But a very, very important piece relates to the investment framework, which will facilitate private sector investment. And the heart of this Ukraine facility is a plan that helps transform the country into a modern market-based economy with significant reforms to open up sectors of the economy, to restructure state-owned enterprises and modernize in the process the energy system. So again, we have the similar logic of reforms being the basis for the disbursement of funds. Critical decisions to be taken on this in less than a fortnight now at the European Council on the 15th of December, and we're confident that this will be done. Finally, the southern neighbourhood, very, very important. As I said, significant financial resources available, but what we're lacking is an overall framework, and we're lacking the contractual relationship that I've just described dominates the work on enlargement countries. So we are moving forward with individual countries to look at having more contractual relationships, more binding, with more reforms and investments linked to the financing. And we would like to anchor that in a more strategic approach to energy, particularly renewable energy and investment in the region. So that is the work program for the southern neighborhood, very much based on the same logic, very much aiming to facilitate the transitions and promote economic growth and convergence in our region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gertian, for making the link between the climate and energy transition, our enlargement policy and challenges, and the support of the European Union. So you really gave us the big picture. And now we will have we will have 10 minutes more or less of pause, because that will allow us to change the setup. I would invite those who are listening to us online to start sending questions and comment on Slido. Those, as I said before, courageous one that woken up early in the morning to listen to us. And please bear with us while we change the setup and we prepare for the next panel that will have some distinguished speakers that will join us online. Thank you. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second part on this side event here from Dubai, where we are talking about the challenges and the next steps in the climate and energy transition in the energy community. And the distinguished panel that I have with me in the room in Dubai and online is made of some of the protagonists of this transformation that will give us the honor and pleasure to listen to their insights about what is going to happen in the coming years in the energy community in terms of climate and energy transformation. So the first panelist is sitting here to my right-hand side, is Artur Lorkowski, the director of the Energy Community Secretariat, and the question for him in the following. The Energy Community Secretariat has been working with contracting parties on adapting and implementing the EU Energy and Climate Acquis for many years. Has this, in your opinion, contributed to enhancing climate ambition? If yes, then how? So Artur and the other panelists will have more or less 4 minutes to reply to the question, and then if there is still time, there will be the possibility to ask them some questions. So Artur, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gianna, for inviting me and for also being with us today and with the Energy Community family here in Dubai at the COP28. I would echo that what has been already said by both Director General Kopman and by Gita, emphasizing the role of the Energy Community in fast-tracking the process of integration of the Energy Community countries into the European Union market. And indeed, the Energy Community, by adopting the EU legislation, is not only allowing the regional integration between the contracting parties, but for the first time, by the adoption of the electricity package, European Union offered to the region, to the neighbourhood, opportunity of the extension of the market coupling for electricity. But this goes together with the enhanced ambition when it comes to the energy transition and for greening the energy sectors. As it has been also mentioned, 2022 in December, it has been marked by adoption of the Energy Community targets for 2030, the targets which are mirroring the targets adopted in the European Union. So for the Energy Community, for Energy Community contracting parties, we have individual targets for energy efficiency, for improving energy efficiency, but also for reducing the CO2 emissions. These targets are being supported by the national energy and climate plans. National energy and climate plans being a very clear reform agenda towards the achievement of these targets, composing with a list of the reforms, of the actions and policy measures which are expected to be provided by the contracting parties. And the contracting parties are committing to the list of these reforms and measures to be provided by 2030. Now we are in the process of the assessing of the plans. The Secretariat has a role of providing the contracting parties with the proper recommendations on that what is being proposed, and we expect to get the more clarity and more stability when it comes to the reform agenda for the countries until June 2024. And this is exactly the way how the ambitions of the contracting parties are being increased by having in place the European Union legislation. But the same applies for the renewables. In the contracting parties of the Energy Community, we have an obligation to transpose the European directives which are governing the renewable transition and the renewable development in the European Union. And this is the way how also the Energy Community parties are accelerating the deployment of renewables in the region. So that is the reason why we can have now the auctions for renewables in Albania, in Serbia, in Moldova, in Georgia, of course, previously also in Ukraine. So you can see a coordinated approach in this regard. Energy community is also the community which is pursuing the agenda for energy efficiency. So that is the reason that the European Union legislation in this regard is also transposed and transformed to the energy community parties. But what is also important, we have the special financial instruments like RIP to increase these measures and to increase the impact of the energy efficiency agenda in the energy community countries. What I wanted also to mention at the end, that this is one remaining element which is now being discussed among the contracting parties to the energy community, which is the carbon pricing you mentioned. At the very beginning, this discussion is advancing. The first exchange of views between the ministers took place in June this year, but we are expecting soon in December, in 2 weeks from now, the ministers to guide how the process of discussion on the carbon pricing for the energy community should be streamlined in months to go, because we have a very big challenge, which is the challenge of the carbon border adjustment mechanism, and the countries of the energy community should be prepared for that, but also could exploit the possibility of being exempted for the electricity sector, which where the CBAM regulation recognizes the progress which has been already achieved in the contracting parties and is offering the exemption possibility for electricity, provided that some specific conditions will be provided. This is the agenda item, the carbon pricing, which will be completing the scheme and the governance for the energy and climate transition. The governance structure, which is also, as it has been emphasized by Dieter, is providing more predictability, is providing more regulatory security, is providing more and better climate for investors. And this is something which we believe is of critical importance for making the real change and making the impact in the neighborhood of the European Union.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arthur. And is this working? Yes. So thank you very much, Arthur. And now I will give the floor to the next speaker, who is online, who is Mr. Oleksiy Sobolyev, Deputy Minister for Digital Development of Ukraine. Thank you very much, Deputy Minister, for joining us this morning. And my question for you is the following. Director Lorkowski has explained how the EU legislation has enhanced the climate ambition in the energy community region. The Secretariat has been working closely with Ukraine, and what I would like to know from you is how this cooperation has enhanced ambition in Ukraine, and of course, in which way the war is changing anything in the way you are expressing your ambition. So, Deputy Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello, yeah, can you hear me, right? I guess yes.
Yes.
Great. The support of energy community is very important for us. So, like one practical aspect is once the invasion started, energy community immediately started support both for the energy sector and for Ukrainians, and we are grateful for taking care of those Ukrainians who could find temporary workplaces at the Secretariat in 2022. And also the Energy Support Fund was created in 2022 by Ukrainian government and energy community, and the Secretariat has already provided equipment for electricity and gas system operators, distribution system operators, combined heating plants and others, and all that helped us to get through last winter and prepare better for this winter, where Russia tries to dismantle our energy systems. And Ukraine has signed an association agreement with EU in 2014. With that, we agreed to implement the European legislation, including the one in the environment and climate sectors. As all the EU member states, Ukraine will have to be net zero emitter by 2050. And here the support of energy community is also important and vital. We very much rely on expert and legal support of the community to develop, implement EU legislation effectively and to effectively reach these goals. And the community is helping us to navigate like this complex topic. And despite the recognition of good progress on climate and environment in general, EU still would like to see more active reforms on climate in Ukraine. And it is not easy task for us. As you mentioned, we're in the middle of a brutal Russian aggression, and we have to rely yet on fossil fuels, gas and coal for heat supply and electricity generation. But we stay committed to the environment and climate goals, and we also see this green transition of Ukraine as a vital point of economic growth, as Gert-Jan just recently was mentioning. So this is a big part of Ukraine plan, and this is a big part of national energy and climate plan that we're developing together with the energy community. So we will have to definitely decarbonize in the time frame that is set, but also in the midterm, we will still be relying on some of the fossil fuels. And solving this complex issue is also could be done with the help of the Energy Community Secretariat, and it is making it all more realistic to do. And we're also grateful for cooperation on the development of this exact NECP plan till 2030. And we have many thanks to Arthur, Michael Kurtyka, and the Secretariat team for support of organizing a high-level advisory group meetings, constant communication and advice. So since this is a complex endeavor and also complicated by the war, we need all to work together and to organize a lot of different stakeholders for the plan to be both realistic but also achievable in the medium term. And in conclusion, I would like to share our goals outlined by the draft NECP modeling that we have. So by 2030, we expect 27% of renewable energy in gross final energy consumption and 30% reduction in methane emissions, phasing out coal by 2035. So that's our goals, and we're discussing other ambitious goals, and we'll be happy to present them in the first draft of NECP sometime later this year or in January next year. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. And thank you very much, most of all, for your determination in pursuing the climate transition in spite of the brutal war that you are suffering. We are supporting you fully, and we hope that you will be able to fulfill your ambitions. And now we move on to the second online speaker, which is Mrs. Nino Tandilashvili. I hope I'm pronouncing your name more or less well. First Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture. So, Minister, Georgia has recently submitted its long-term strategy with a 2050 climate neutrality target to the UNFCCC Secretariat. So, congratulations. And Georgia 2030 Energy Community climate target is more ambitious than its NDC. So can you tell us what is the primary driver for the climate ambition of Georgia, and what challenges do you need to overcome to realize this ambition? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, it is a great honor and privilege for me to be the speaker at a high-level panel on enhanced climate ambition in the EU neighborhood at COP28 on behalf of the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture of Georgia. First of all, of course, I would like to underline the importance of the COP28 as we are expecting the conclusion of very first global stocktake, and the global community needs to make crucial decisions to accelerate ambition in the climate action. As you are well aware, the European Commission has made a historic recommendation to grant Georgia EU candidate status, and of course, which is another huge step forward in the country's European integration process. And we do hope that in December, the European Council will make a positive decision about granting Georgia the candidate status. And of course, implementation of the existing priorities and obligations within the European integration process plays an essential role in shaping the environmental and climate change policies in our country. Georgia, as you highlighted, also adopted a long-term low-emission development strategy in April 2023. And as you have mentioned, Georgia declares the carbon neutrality as a goal, which is at the heart of the European Green Deal, and directs its efforts to achieve it by 2050. The long-term low-emission development strategy is fully compliant with the United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change, together with its, of course, Paris Agreement and EU-Georgia Association Agreement, the Energy Community, and the UN 2030 Agenda. In accordance with the Paris Agreement obligation in 2021, we have updated our nationally determined contribution document. Outdated NDC defined new mitigation targets. In particular, Georgia is fully committed to reduce national GHG emissions to 35% below the emissions level in 1990. And Georgia also named the conditional targets that would be reduction of the emissions up to 57%, but in case of an international support. For the implementation of the NDC, it is important to highlight that the government of Georgia also approved climate strategy and action plan for 2021-2023, which we are updating for the next coming years. And of course, it covers all the sectoral chapters on energy generation, transmission, industry, waste, building, transport, agriculture, and forestry, all those priority sectors, of course. And as a result of the consultations last year among the energy community, the European Commission, and the government of Georgia, a new, more ambitious target for Georgia for greenhouse gas reduction for 2023 was determined, which actually envisaged the reduction of GHG emissions by 47% compared to the level of 1990. So it's an already increased target. And of course, the renewed commitment will be reflected in the Georgia's updated nationally determined contribution document, and we also in the respective action plan, which is already prepared, and it will be soon adopted by the government of Georgia. And also, as a last point, to directly answer the question that you have raised, and which is very important, let me elaborate that the driver for the Georgia's climate ambition is, first of all, to join forces with the global community to tackle the climate change and preserve the planet for the future generations. And it is also important to mention that Georgia is one of the countries very vulnerable to the impacts of the climate change due to the sea level rise, and the Black Sea actually affected certain areas of the land. Also, growing frequency and intensity of the floods, flash floods, landslides, and mud flows have caused a huge damage to the economy and to the people and to the countryside of our country. And another driver, of course, is fulfillment of the climate-related international obligations. We are moving forward to the next stage of the European integration path. And of course, EU, on its hand, strives to be the first climate neutral continent. And of course, Georgia is the part of this ambition. And one of the main challenges is, of course, how the countries, and among them Georgia, will be able to deliver all these ambition plans. and the fulfillment of the named goals will need the scrupulous implementation of the existing plans and very thorough planning in the future. And for that, a very precise monitoring system is a must to control the fulfillment processes and intervene in the planning process accordingly. And this will require, of course, access to the financial resources and capacity building process in the developing countries. And another is, of course, the access to the modern technologies, because it's important to have a rapid technology transfer and fulfillment of the above-mentioned goals. Otherwise, could be very hard. And of course, we need to keep in mind that we are working very closely with the energy community to implement the EU ETS directives, also the monitoring MRV system in our country. We have already started a project in this regard, because as it was highlighted, the carbon border adjustment mechanism is an essential tool for increasing the climate ambition in the region, and not only. And of course, we are working at the top of our abilities to implement all those very important regulations in the country in the coming years. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister, for highlighting the ambition of your country, and I hope that you will, with the European Union support and support of the energy community, continue on that path. And now let me give the floor to the last speaker online, which is Mr. Ilka Starost, Senior Project Lead, Capacity Development for Climate Policy from GIZ. And my question is the following. As GIZ has been supporting some contracting parties in drafting their national energy and climate plans, how do you evaluate that the process has contributed to enhancing national climate ambition? Mr. Starost, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
It is Mrs. and not Mr.
That is all right.
I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. Good morning, dear Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear participants of today's side event. I am very much honored to participate in today's discussion. And in order to answer your question, I would like to emphasize on 3 contributing factors, which in my opinion are crucial. The one is the National Energy and Climate Plan itself, as it provides for a tool for integrated planning. And I believe it really has been a milestone when the European Commission provided and introduced the NECP as a tool to align energy and climate planning in an unprecedented level. What that means is the format and content of the NECP were prescribed in detail. The process of the NECP elaboration had to be set up in a manner to assure collaboration and coordination among all relevant actors in the country. And actually the NECP required scrupulous analysis, a very detailed analytical base to be incorporated. And of course that meant this NECP process was and has been a very demanding exercise. And just to mention, during the past years, of course, an added challenge was that contracting parties worked on the NECP elaboration in the context of the corona pandemic situation, which provided for additional challenges and insecurities. The second aspect, was the second contributing factor, which I believe is really important, is that the strong linkage between analytical knowledge base and action planning. And everybody who's worked on it knows that through the process, with all the requirement to deep dive on the one hand into providing analytical basis and in-depth sectoral planning, that led to a situation where contracting parties very much advanced their understanding for future challenges on the one hand, but also on opportunities for decarbonizing the economies, and that at sectoral level. And contracting parties did build up different scenarios that would show how specific actions and measures actually can help to raise their climate ambition level. And the third contributing factor, which I believe has been really important, is actually the regional guidance, which had been provided at level of the energy community. So on the one hand, of course, the energy community itself provides a platform for contracting parties to exchange and learn jointly, and that was proved, in my opinion, very beneficial, because there were many questions in the beginning, and that really has been a new process and challenge for all countries involved. And additionally, and in this whole frame, of course, the Energy Community Secretariat provided continuous guidance throughout the process, and actually looking into all the different aspects of the NECP elaboration. And I believe that was a very contributing factor also to support the kick start of the NECP processes in all the contracting parties. And I must say, in this whole context, all contracting parties did provide and did show very strong commitment to the process. And despite acting on the basis of the recommendation in the beginning, all contracting parties did assure that they started the development process for the NECPs at an early stage. Now, all those three factors, in my opinion, what are, how to say, they all led to a situation towards contracting parties actually being in a position to have very strong capacities for well-informed planning and decision-making. And when the negotiation of the 2030 energy and climate targets happened under the umbrella of the energy community, which Arthur already referred to, contracting parties already had advanced actually on the work on their analytical base underlying the NECPs. And they were aware of obstacles and prospects in each sector of their economies. And this understanding actually led, or let's say, fed into the 2030 target negotiations, and this led to significant climate ambition enhancement. And climate ambition enhancement here, for me, means, on the one hand, the question, of course, of increased decarbonization targets, but it also means increased transparency and, let's say, a foundation of very robust planning of the whole NECPs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ilka. And now I would, well, thank you very much to the three online speakers. And now I give the floor to the other two speakers that we have in the room. And the first one on my list is Chiara Martinelli, the director of the Climate Action Network, CAN Europe. And the question is the following. We have talked already quite a lot about the work of the Energy Community Secretariat and the experience of the contracting parties. And now, how would you, as an outside observer, evaluate the impact of aligning with the EU acquis for the EU neighbourhood? What is going well and what could be improved? We are very curious of hearing your point of view as somebody which is very let's say, experienced of the process, but at the same time you have the outside look. So Chiara, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us here. So I'm going to follow up a lot on, I mean, a lot has been said already, but indeed, like I'm also here to share our, as you call it, as an outsider view. I don't know if I will call it outsider. Actually, it's an insiders, because I mean, we do work in trying to influence and to push and support the development of these policy processes in Europe and in the region, in the Western Balkan region. So I think my first point is a little bit about also our presence here in a way, is that everything we are talking about, I think, is not going to be sustainable and is not going to go as fast as we can if we don't involve people and communities and citizens. So, of course, this is always my must say when I start in such an exchange with all of you here. Then, like when we look at what is going well and what is still a little bit of a challenge, I would say, I mean, I will try to be very brief because I know we are running out of time. So I would say like mainly two first things on what's going well. I think we have been hearing a lot like throughout the year and in this panel as well. I mean, the role of the valuable role of the energy community. I think in really like transposing all the EU acquis in the region and in the Western Balkan region is definitely a driver for the energy transition in those countries, as it is like as the EU legislation are for the EU member states, right? So I think that what is maybe a good mention here is also that we see that really also being a fast track for everything that is needed to also accelerate and making the accession process possible. And then I think the other important, I would say, positive highlight I wanted to share is that also reflecting a little bit on the moment where we are. I mean, we come out from 5 years at the EU level from an unprecedented set of legislations on climate and energy policies with our European Green Deal. And I think the European Green Deal, together with the Green Agenda for Western Balkans, I mean, provide for both the EU and the region to be together on a climate action target. Even though, I mean, as a civil society, as Climate Action Network Europe, we do call for carbon neutrality by 2040. Like, we do recognize that having a common target between the neighborhood and the European Union is definitely a driver to accelerate the transition. Now, I think what is important to say is also what we would like to do better, and how we would like to give some ideas on how we can accelerate actually this energy transition in the Western Balkan regions. So my first point is a very concrete one in light of all the work that the European Commission is doing in preparing for the 2040 climate targets. We do believe that because we have this common objective I just speak about 2050, I think it will be really a missed opportunity if we don't invite the countries of the neighborhoods to also be part of the discussion in defining and in putting forward climate targets 2040. By hopefully following also the Scientific Advisory Board guidance on that regard. And then when it comes, the other things is when it comes to NECPs and in the Western Balkan regions. So as Climate Action Network Europe, thanks to the presence of our members in the region, we did the first assessments of the draft NECPs that have been put forward. And I think it's important here to highlight that there is a recognition of, I think, a very a quite substantial step forward when it comes especially to rollout of renewables and the investments also that are going towards that region. But definitely there is a lot to be done to raise up the ambition again. So we do hope that by, especially for those countries that are already advanced in this process, that by the end of June 2024, we can see updated NECPs from those countries. And then my last point is about, but I'm sure maybe the speaker after me will speak about it, is really about the making sure that we recognize also the need of support and financial support for the transition to happen in the region. And when I'm saying that, I also see the opportunity with it has been mentioned, I think, by the keynote speaker, with the new growth plan for the Western Balkans. I think there is, if I'm not wrong, there is the first pillar that is speaking about enhancing economic integration with the EU single market. I do think that this is an unprecedented, again, opportunity to give the support and that it's needed for this acceleration to happen.
Thank you very much, Chiara, also for having reminded us of the importance of involving people and communities in the decision making. And now the last speaker in the room, as usual, last but not least, and thank you for the patience for listening to all of us. It's Marcus Bent, Acting Managing Director of EIB Global. And the question for him is, the EIB is an important player with regard to climate finance, actually the climate bank. How is the climate ambition on a national level important for obtaining financing from the EIB?
Thank you very much. That was not at all a problem to listen to all the speakers. It was actually a great pleasure and very, very interesting. Thanks, and I'm very pleased to be here. This is indeed very important for us, as you said, as the EU Climate Bank, not only inside the EU, but also outside the EU, in the Western Balkans, in the southern neighborhood, but also beyond that. Climate is the most important driver of what we do and how we work with our partners. Last year alone, we financed close to 4.5 billion in climate action. Now, and thereby we contribute to renewable energy, energy efficiency, sustainable transport, and also what was mentioned before by Gert-Jan, to the interconnection between our neighborhood and the EU. Now, to your question, investing in long-term assets, not public ones, but also private ones, requires clear standards, it requires visibility, it requires reliability. And that's why this work is so extremely important for our partners and in turn for us to support their ambitions. And this work of integration on one hand, and on the other hand, defining what is a green standard, what assets still make sense 20 years from now, and they normally last this long, to have the standard and how a clear pathway going towards this is crucial for us to support investments, to work with our partners to identify the right investments and then find the right investment strategy. And that's important not only for public investments, it's also equally, and if not more, even important for private investments. And that enables us to work, for example, in Georgia with TBC and the Bank of Georgia to support green finance in the private sector. It also enables us, even in the support of Ukrainian resistance, which of course has, as the minister mentioned, many needs, but also there we're investing in new assets, and we're trying to to support Ukraine in their ambition to reorient their energy system. And also there, it is very important to have a clear guiding post, and this cannot be, even in a situation like in Ukraine, it's very important to know what is our ambition, what makes sense a long time from now. So while being this short last speaker, I don't want to be too long. So the clear answer is, it is indispensable for us to have a clear plan going forward and to have a clear idea about standards. And that way we are hopefully able to provide the necessary support to our partners to not only have standards and new regulation and everything else, but also the means to actually address it and move forward together in financing the future of Europe and as much as we can as Europe, also for the world. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Marcus. You've been indeed very, very concise and very clear. Standards are essential, and I'm happy to continue this conversation on the standards, perhaps on another occasion. So we are at the end of our panel discussion, but there are still 6 minutes, and there is a question that I have here on the slide that I would like to ask, because it is actually very interesting, and it is a question for Deputy Minister Sobolev of Ukraine. I see he's still with us, and so he can answer. And the question is the following: what are your thoughts on Ukraine's opportunity to play a role in supplying green energy to Europe? Are reforms still needed? So, Deputy Minister, the floor is yours for a last word. We have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a very good, insightful question. So As we're developing Ukraine plan, for example, and NECP as well, green transition is a big business opportunity that we see in Ukraine. So during this green transition, we could be a reliable partner for Europe's green transition and Ukraine's own. So first of all, it's of course renewable energy. So we have enough land, enough natural resources to be both the ground for solar and wind, but also to localize some of the production of the supply chain for these two technologies. The other part is that we have enough resources and people and industry to increase production of nuclear and hydro. And we're actually still building additionally 2 hydro plants in Ukraine. And this will allow us to have more green energy, both for ourselves and maybe exporting to Europe in the near future. But then we could also be exporting the products made with the use of green energy, such as green steel. So if you look at the iron ore deposits on the continent, and besides Russia, which is probably will be sanctioned more in the following years, there is no such big iron ore deposit. So basically, Ukraine is a great starting ground for green steel transition, and we're also like developing this with our partners from Europe and from across the world as just an example. And we also have other critical materials like lithium and others important in the green transition supply chains. So I think that in general, this green transition is a big business opportunity to both in Ukraine and in EU, and it benefits us all to grow together and towards the more sustainable future.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Thank you for this last intervention, which is, I think, an expression of hope, because in spite of the tragic situation that your country is living, you are looking at the future and you're looking at the business opportunities. This is really a great spirit, and I think a great way to end this interesting conversation, where I think we looked at the challenges ahead for the energy community contracting parties, but I think the opportunities are bigger than the challenges. I think the Secretariat and the parties are doing a great job in showing the will to pursue the transition. So I really want to close on an optimistic note. We are having in a bit more than a week also, as Artur said, the ministerial of the energy community, where I will be very glad to participate and contribute. And I think this is going to be another milestone of our very good collaboration with you, the Secretariat, and with the countries, and will give us a blueprint for the future that will see us more and more closer and closer together. So thank you very much for being here and for participating. A big applause, please, to the speakers in the room and online. And I wish you a very good continuation of the day and of the COP. Thanks.
Thank you.